Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of Toolhouse Rock. Today, we're excited to be hosting Hexagate, a security protocol. A quick recap for any first-time viewers. Toolhouse Rock is a recurring community call where we host exciting projects in the Web3 space. With a specific focus on their relevance to MakerDAO and the endgame roadmap. Just a few disclaimers before we get started. Our views are our own and are not representative of MakerDAO as a whole. Information moves very quickly in this space, and therefore inaccuracies are possible, especially if you're viewing this in the distant future. And finally, none of this is financial or legal advice. All right, Hexagate, let's take a closer look. After analyzing Hexagate, we feel it is especially applicable to the following scopes: stability, protocol, and finally, core resiliency. And looking at improvement categories, certainly security, governance, and finally, sustainability of the protocol. All right, thank you for joining us today, Neve. I will hand it over to you.
Awesome, thank you, Ketcher. Happy to be participating in here and showcasing our product and our capabilities. I'll just share my screen so we have like a couple of slides in the demo. Great. Awesome. So as Ketcher mentioned, like first of all, my name is Neve. I'm the CTO of Hexagate. Hexagate is real-time threat intelligence company and doing basically threat hunting for any type of threat. That means we are also helping protocols, wallets, asset managers, basically anyone in the Web3 space to catch any type of threats before they happen, as they happen, and after they took place. Primarily in order to stop it before it even impacts any digital assets, but of course, like we have different kind of stakeholders, the user platform for various reasons, also to investigate crime and so on. What I'm going to show, just for the agenda, it's going to be a relatively short slide deck about what is the problem that we're solving, how we're solving it, and some of a closer look of what exactly we're doing. And following that, I'll also show a demo where we go over specific, like 2 examples where I think are interesting to dive into and analyze. So we'll get to that also later in the demo part. Cool. So before I talk about Hexagate itself, preliminary to that is the actual problem that we're solving. So basically, on the Web3 space, what Hexagate is solving is a way, like a kind of another approach to how smart contracts should be handled in terms of security. So we're a team of basically coming from cybersecurity background, and also specifically on auditing code, not necessarily smart contracts, but rather like different kind of verticals. Also on the healthcare space, on any space really. And on Web3, like there is a huge market for auditing where like lots of audit companies auditing code, but still like the situation is that like lots of contracts and lots of protocols still get hacked like on a daily basis, even though like many security vendors like auditing companies audited the project. And we think that is true. Like this is the situation because of various reasons. Primarily is because auditing is mainly manual, and the problem with that is that you have like just a fixed set of eyes looking at the code and trying to think of potential vulnerabilities in the code. And obviously, this is not a comprehensive approach, or at least like you only know what the auditor found, and you never know what the auditor never found, unless like some attacker or some North Korean attacker now targets your protocol. Also, auditing like is a costly business. So normally you don't just take one auditing company, you take like a bunch of them. And not anyone has like infinite budget to have hundreds of security researchers' eyes looking at the code. That makes auditing also like a costly business, and eventually like some protocols have to spare some time of auditing companies looking at the code because they just don't have enough budget to pay for so many auditing companies. Also, auditing is something which only covers first-party code, and on DeFi, like you have basically a money Lego where one protocol relies on others, such as tokens, even bridges, oracles, and so on. It is normally overlooked and is not covered by any auditing company. So, for example, if you're a protocol aggregator building on top of another protocol, for example, that makes auditing far less relevant to you, because even if your code is like do not have any vulnerabilities, of course, like the code that you are building on top is might have some vulnerabilities in it, and then that would make eventually you susceptible. Also, like protocols building on another chain where the bridge gets hacked, for example. This is again a great case for why auditing is not enough, because the bridge can get hacked, and then if you rely on some wrapped tokens of that bridge, and you just assume that they will always be backed by by tokens, if the bridge got hacked, then yeah, that renders like the protocol also to be working with tokens which does not have any collateral on the other side of the bridge. And all in all, like auditing is again only looks for what the obviously what that security researcher has uncovered. So eventually you only know what you know. And what we think is truly missing in the Web3 space, and this is gonna every week we're reminded by it, is that you have lots of unknowns in DeFi space. Of course, lots of 0 days, and since everything is built on top of anything else, and it is a money Lego, then anything can just fall apart in a single transaction. And this makes the case for an ongoing protection, where you're basically like the first step in that in real-time proactive protection is, first of all, like mapping all the threats, like mapping all the possible attack vectors. That is like the governance proposals, like tokens, oracles, the first-party code, like any third-party code that you're relying on, admin keys, and so on, and then setting up and monitoring on those addresses. Now, we take an approach like the real-time proactive protection approach takes a stand where we're assuming that not all threats were covered in the auditing phase, but whether we incorporate machine learning and classification algorithms to actually uncover any potential exploits before they happen and as they happen on the protocol, that only like kind of a machine learning algorithm or sophisticated like security heuristics can find, when it's not looking for the actual vulnerability, but rather like for the attacker itself and the actual attack. So all in all, like a real-time proactive protection is kind of both covering what you already know, like the threats that you know of. For example, one threat could be we might be breached and the admin keys might be breached for the protocol and then possibly like upgraded. And also it takes into account what is unknown. Like we might have a breach or might have a vulnerability in one of our contracts, which we are not aware. And this is why we need a real-time proactive protection that actually chases down for those kind of vulnerabilities which weren't known before. So yeah, when looking on the Web3 space, like one thing that we this is one mindset that we incorporate in terms of like the proactive protection when it comes to protecting protocols in real time. Another thing that also is prominent on Web3 is anything around like phishing. Now, if you look at the Web3 space and crime on Web3, like eventually you see a mixture of both exploits, which are normally just enormous losses of protocols, and also phishing scams, which are relatively small, not all the time, but relatively small scams of individuals, but in huge amounts of individuals. So all in all, like the whole Web3 crime is comprised of both phishing scams, fraud, and exploits kind of threats that happen regularly. Now, we think phishing is relatively like obviously phishing is probably a 30-year-old kind of problem in the security space, but on Web3, phishing kind of took a new way because users are not lured into stealing their credentials, like their passwords and usernames and all of that, but rather to sign malicious transactions. And that is also true for, you know, if now a whale or someone who has like lots of governance tokens is now lured into a phishing campaign and eventually loses all of his governance tokens all at once without even noticing. So phishing becomes like also a huge pain point in Web3 security because users are just like one transaction away from getting wiped, and that has like huge implication for the users because you can lose all of its funds. But also for protocols, like phishing on their governance participants is something which is sometimes overlooked, and this is another thing that we think is a huge problem in this space. And this is why we bring also a proactive approach where we are chasing down like any new phishing campaign before it impacts any type, like before it impacts any user, you know, whether it's like a retail user or governance participant. Like we don't take an approach where we monitor specific users, but rather we monitor like new sites that come in and also like new transactions that come in that might indicate this is a new on-chain phishing campaign, so that whenever a user of Hexagate engages with this new phishing campaign, whether it's like an address or a new domain, Hexagate will know to block it right on time. So all in all, like just cover like two main avenues of Web3 crime. One is exploits, where protocols are not protocol incorporates mainly auditing so far, and we take an approach where auditing is just not covering like the unknowns. This is why you need a proactive approach to monitor for any unknowns that might impact the protocol. And second, anything around like phishing and fraud, where users are lured into signing malicious transactions to eventually steal their funds. And on the Maker, for example, Maker case, they could be like governance participants who lose their governance tokens to phishing for any type of phishing. Of course, like this is an umbrella term for many type of threats that happen on chain, which include like malicious contracts, address poisoning, malicious dApps, and so on. So when we started Hexagate, we kind of looked at the space. We saw like enormous losses, even though like there are so many auditing companies and so many obviously like traditional phishing tools. And we decided to build Hexagate to actually solve this case for Web3 security. And the way Hexagate works is on the back end, we have two main components. One is the blockchain monitoring, and one is URL or domain monitoring. Where on that infrastructure level, we index we have multiple chains indexed from Genesis in real time, and also on new dApps that come in, we have them indexed as well. And we create what we call like our security data lake, which eventually powers our threat intelligence feed, which covers all of this. The way it covers all of these kind of threats is that we have models that detect each and every kind of threat that we just like talked about. Like, it means that we have models to detect new suspicious contracts, new exploiting transactions, and any sorts of phishing campaigns, both on-chain or off-chain, fraud on-chain, scams. We automatically tag like any fund movement, malicious dApps, and so on. So all in all, like we have this threat intelligence feed that eventually powers four main use cases of ours. One being the transaction security. This is anything around like pre-transaction. This is mainly for users using Web3. It can be both like retail users, institutional users. We have like an API which can be used by wallets as well. We also already work with a couple of them that incorporate our API, which uncovers any malicious transactions that users are making due to any type of phishing or scam. The second thing that we have is address monitoring. This is anything around like I have contracts. I can be a user or the protocol itself, and I want to get like real-time alerts whenever something is about to attack those contracts. So that is the address monitoring. It's currently used by the biggest names in the industry to protect over a few billions of dollars in the space and getting real-time alerts before anything happens. So we have dozens of protocol customers and also institutional asset managers using that component of address monitoring just by itself. Another thing that we do is address screening. This allows like VASP, for example, to screen any new address that they need. For example, like we have a very popular DeFi aggregator that wants to comply with the US regulation, for example, even though it's like kind of blurry, but they at least know that they cannot mess with stolen funds. So they've been using Hexagate in order to do that. And lastly, we have the Web3 Activity Explorer. And that is basically anything around our on-chain data that we collect. We allow using our platform to actually do forensics and investigations whenever a new threat comes in. So that you can triage real quick and not just rely on us saying, hey, this is a critical risk, but trust us, withdraw, pause the contract, let the users withdraw automatically all their funds and so on. But we also provide the tools to actually understand what happened and so on. I'll show that briefly. So that's the security platform that we've been building. Eventually, all of this is served via a web app, an API, and also a browser extension, where the browser extension is free to download on the Chrome store for anyone, and the web app with an API is on a paid subscription based fee. A couple of the things that we've been doing in Hexagate besides building the platform is also helping like finding vulnerabilities and helping protocols in a need whenever like they're getting attacked, and we kind of monitor that and then we notify them before an attack happens, and as it does, in order to help them get a hold of that and also set up a war room and so on. So some of the things that we've been doing is a research on the Polygon breach, where we found a major consensus bypass, which was fixed, like disclosed and fixed, which enabled to bypass the consensus on the Polygon proof of stake. We've been helping Euler on the Euler case, like we notify them on Discord whenever, like before it happened, whenever like we saw the suspicious contract attacking them, and also like help throughout like the war room to actually get a hold of that. On the Compound V2 fork, Compound V2 side, we have been helping other Compound V2 forks and Compound to actually be aware of a big risk in Compound V2 whenever you open new markets. So we educated also some of our customers, which are Compound forks, and the community to actually open new markets safely. So we've been doing that. And lastly, like a couple of other examples was detecting the 11 million hack on Yearn. We've been helping Economics and the War Room whenever like they got hacked in real time, both to track like the funding sources of the attacker and also what happened in the attack, where the fund sources are going, and basically manage all of the war rooms whenever something happens in real time. War rooms, like maybe worth saying something like or that like are chaotic whenever they happen. So this is why whenever like we work with a protocol, like we come up with a very clear and concise plan as to what to do whenever like you get whenever you have an incident. So we have a very like thorough and detailed plan for our customers, like both pre-incident and both post-incident whenever something's happened. And this is because like we've been participating in so many war rooms by now, and we've been seeing so many protocols get hacked and what exactly has to be done whenever like you get hacked. So this is why like we also help others whenever like they get hacked, because we know what steps should be taken. Awesome. So a bit about how Hexagate works. So basically, go to slideshow. Awesome. So basically, the way Hexagate works is I'll demonstrate that via like a small schema where you have an attacker which wants to perform his malicious activity. So his first step normally in the kill chain is to get funding. Since we're monitoring like any transaction on chain, like we see the funding, we tag the funding automatically, and whenever we think it's suspicious funding. So that's like our first signal in here. Now, whenever we see that, like it's one signal that happens on our platform. Now, normally, like the hacker before he attacks, like starts to prepare, and that means he's potentially deploying, like exploiting contracts before he utilizes them in order to exploit protocols. The reason he needs contracts is because he needs to perform like a lot of steps all at once. So he needs a way to run multiple contract calls all at once, potentially like taking a flash loan, and then like using that flash loan in another contract, manipulating the price, and so on. So that's like the preparation. That's another like things that we using our models, things that we discover automatically. At this part, we would trigger an alert in real time that would trigger something potentially bigger. So that means that we trigger that alert, the customer or the protocol gets this alert. Potentially all the users of the protocol could withdraw, or the protocol could pause, or blacklist the address, or just pause specific functionalities that might be under threat. And what the at this part, like automation takes place, we block the malicious activity normally by working with the protocol and understanding the operational constraints, whether the protocol can do anything. Sometimes we work with protocol like Maker, which are completely decentralized and no one can really take action in real time in terms of the protocol itself. So we also come up with approaches on how to protect, still protect the funds in the protocol in real time, possibly by handing over the responsibility to users. Now, hackers normally at this point, like if nothing was blocked, send the exploiting transaction using the exploiting contract. Now, eventually, like if the attacker is successful, of course, he is possibly starting to launder the money and start to move his funds into a way that potentially to a mixer or to an exchange that has no KYC and so on. But with Hexagate, we're eliminating that step because we're proactive and we're actually detecting the threat before it impacts anything. Yeah, so that's on the proactive exploit detection and prevention. Right now, we're also monitoring like dozens of customers and also proactively preventing threat from specific protocols that we work with in terms of like the actual automation that pauses anything or pauses specific functionalities or blacklist or withdraw automatically for some of our asset manager customers and so on. Yannick, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, how do you let the users know when they are about to link in a phishing link or a malicious contract? Just it's like a pop-up or an extension on your wallet, or how that works?
So it's a great question. It really depends on the kind of product that you are using from Hexagate. So for retail users, you can definitely download our Chrome extension to keep protected. We also work with wallets so that it seamlessly would work out of the wallet. And also, like you can use the web app, our web app, like if you're a protocol or a user, to actually get real-time alerts whenever they happen. Now, the alerts normally that we give whenever like an exploit is about to hit a position of yours, like if a protocol or breach, whatever, like if you have some funds stored in a contract, is either via Telegram, Slack, PagerDuty, email, or just a general purpose webhook, so that you get notifications right away and you can take action. Normally the automation normally we advise on taking automation in real time. But also like we have the possibility to get those, manual PagerDuty, Slack, Telegram, and so on, kind of notifications as well. So all in all, like the pre-transaction and the post-transaction phases are covered end to end.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Well, I guess it's very the automate. It's more useful, maybe, or more when it comes to your urgent issues. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. And by the way, like on the pre-transaction, of course, there's no automation that has to be done because we're preventing users from ever interacting with any malicious entity on chain. So that means like it's just blocking right away. Like exploit is to automatically withdraw or to pause really takes automation to take place because like the contract itself cannot. It does not protect itself, and some human intervention or automated intervention is needed to protect the contract under threat.
Okay, nice. And where do you see more threats when it comes to retail users? Where do you see more threats, like when it comes to breaches or DeFi? Or any other?
Yeah, Yeah, so of course, for retail users, like phishing, anything around like phishing, fraud, and scams, like you just literally anywhere you search in Google, like you MetaMask install, and then you get like a malware installed if you're not paying attention. And like this is a huge problem. Like on Twitter, like you get targeted all the time. So this is huge. The thing is that with exploits, like all it takes is, even on prominent protocols, right? All it takes is a single transaction to wipe out your asset. That like your on bridges or protocols doesn't really matter. So it's really hard to tell, like for users and their kind of their like risk appetite, what's like what would be the first thing to do, but rather like just go in and start like with whatever you can start in terms of like using the tool like as fast as possible. For example, like using our anti-phishing and anti-fraud kind of extension just literally takes a click to install. But using our web app is a bit more complicated, and this is why like we're a B2B company. Like we sell to businesses. Normally, we don't sell to retail, and we work with, for example, asset managers or big protocols, actually like Maker, to keep them protected and to actually build a very high fence before anything can threaten their contracts. So shortly, again, so for retail, of course, like using an extension and any tool that helps to mitigate the risk right away is obviously like the first thing to go. For protocols and bigger asset managers and so on, like obviously incorporating a much thicker strategy is obviously the right way to go, as stakes are much higher when you have like billions of dollars in a bunch of contracts, or a few millions of dollars in a bunch of contracts for an asset manager, and it can be just lost in a single transaction after an attacker exploits those contracts.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense, because also when it came to asset managers, also the threats are more sophisticated. So cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
Of course, yeah, going on with the deck. So regarding our, like we talked about exploit detection and prevention, how we do that in real time, and that is the same case for phishing protection. So for example, on the MakerDAO, on MakerDAO, so we potentially we would surface out any phishing campaign that goes on-chain or off-chain, targeting any MakerDAO users or Maker holders, so that any governance participant is secure just by getting, for example, real-time alerts wherever like they want to get those alerts in, like Discord, Telegram, emails, and so on. And also potentially like using the extension in order to keep them just protected when they engage with malicious dApps. Now, our infrastructure is robust enough to handle those two kind of both models of exploits and both of phishing. So that's in the phishing case. Now, on the post-incident workflow, normally we advise on how to protect yourself upfront pre-incident, and that is like having all the notifications in place, having all the tools in place, and so on, just like you asked, but also having the post-incident flow, post-incident kind of preparation is also important. Just also important, of course, because in Web3 things happen so fast, so you must be pausing anything or stopping specific functionality, or letting your users, for example, withdraw automatically their funds whenever an exploit happens is obviously like the first way to go, if that's possible. And normally when we work with the centralized protocol, that's our strategy. It really depends, again, if the protocol wants to enable the users or just like update them over the communication channels of the protocol. It can be Discord or Twitter or any other platform to communicate that to their users to do automatically. Now, other than pausing anything, it's anything around like managing a war room. So as mentioned, like we have a very detailed plan as to what to do within a war room, and usually it takes it's anything around like running a postmortem, starting to engage with the attacker possibly. Sometimes, like not all the time it's beneficial, but sometimes like if it has been front run, for example, sometimes like the front runners can return some of the funds and so on. And also to discuss like how the community should be like how this incident should be communicated to the community as fast as possible, because eventually this is user funds. And also anything around like law enforcement, to contacting law enforcement, exchanges that can possibly help, stablecoin providers and so on to freeze assets. And also, this is the part of things we've been doing in war rooms, is trying to track funding sources of the attacker, or where funding further goes into. And this is because we're trying to uncover like the identity of the attacker and potentially like make it, like to eventually to make him return the funds. Now, in terms of our why Hexagate stands apart from the competition, because obviously there is a competition in that space, because the problem is kind of impossible to impossible to miss, both like on the phishing front and the exploit front. Is mainly three things. One is the early detection. So we have been monitoring like hundreds or thousands of hacks, even $100 type of hacks that happen, you know, just an unknown token on BNB, and even the biggest one for hundreds of millions of dollars, for example, like the Euler one and others. And we've been working very hard to improve our early detection capabilities. So that is something that we are constantly optimizing for. Like we don't want to be shouting, like we don't want to be telling anyone, hey, there is a huge exploit happening, just happened like 10 minutes ago, but rather there is a huge exploit going to happen in 10 minutes, and we have something to do about it. So that's the early detection. The accuracy is another thing that we've been working really hard, is the false positive rate. Of course, we incorporate like models to predict whenever a contract is an exploiting one, whenever an exploiting transaction is an exploiting transaction, and so on. So that's the false positive rate that we've been striving to get as close as possible to zero. The way we calculate that is we go contract by contract basis in terms of like the biggest pools, and then we analyze how many events we fired ever since like this contract went live, and based on our models during the course of time, like during the entire time that we cover. So that's the false positive rate. And lastly, like the response time is, we've been working very intimately with customers to automate response whenever like we see a threat. So that means like we provide customizable automated workflows to actually remediate the issue, and not just like hand out alerts and let the user, like let the customer, you know, deal with what he needs to do in order like to remediate the issue. But like we're very much with the protocol, with the customer, to help them protect themselves before anything happens. Now, we think we have the broadest coverage in terms of Web3 threats today, and that is both exploits and phishing, fraud, and scams. So for Maker, for example, like having Hexagate is actually beneficial both for the Maker core contracts, for the governance security. Like for example, any new governance proposal that comes in is inspected by Hexagate, and we could potentially uncover like any backdoors, any malicious proposers that will undergo a very thorough analysis before it's even executed. And of course, like the entire community will benefit from alerts, so that, for example, like users are not just like targeted on the governance. When if they're a governance, like if they're community members or governance participants, so they can get those real-time alerts by Hexagate and keep protected. So all in all, like this is why we think we have the broad coverage of Web3 threat, possibly covering like any type of threat of the Maker community. So that's that. Now, another thing I wouldn't cover this time, but we're working on is our on-chain security module. It's basically not something, it's not like a protocol by itself, but rather like some sort of like an interfaces that we eventually enable us to incorporate our on-chain intel off-chain in still in a decentralized manner, in a manner that does not like waste too much gas and so on. It's still under like still not available for anyone to use, but rather like we have been discussing with top leaders in the space on how to and we're about like to release a white paper on that. Like before, we try to sell it to the community, because it's kind of, we're expecting kind of a community buy-in of that before we are going just commercially with on-chain security model. So more on that later, but of course, like if anyone is interested in hearing more about this, you can contact us at info@hexagate.com to hear a bit more about this on-chain security module, and possibly like how we can collaborate if you're a protocol and so on, how you can utilize that. So so that's that. Now, before I go into the demo, one thing I wouldn't demo because of like the time that we have is our extension. So basically, as mentioned, like we have an extension to do pre-transaction screening into any transaction that you make. So this is just like a small screenshot from the extension. This is on the left, and MetaMask on the right. And the extension, basically you just install it from the store, and then it seamlessly works on top of any wallet, even like mobile wallets, if you connect them with Wallet Connect. And on the left, you see like this is a high-risk transaction, and we also give a breakdown of the risks that there are in the transaction itself. And so that's kind of a demo screenshot. Now we have like around 15 minutes or 10 minutes, so I'll jump straight into the demo. Cool. So this is our platform. I wouldn't demo like all the components of the platform, but rather like just anything around like a specific around our exploit monitoring. So basically, on Hexagate, you can define monitors, for example, and when you define monitors, all you need to do is to provide the alerts and where you want to get those alerts in. And that can, as mentioned, can be Slack, Telegram, webhook, and so on. From that point on, what will happen is that you will get those alerts in real time, both in the channels that you configure and also like in the event feed. Now, for the purpose of this demo, what I wanted to show is a specific exploit that happened, and something called Tsunami Protocol, which is a DeFi protocol that got hacked for around $2 million. And what I wanted to showcase is how we detected this issue before it impacted any digital assets, and also as it impacted and throughout like the laundering. So if we're going over the events, so this happened like a month ago, and on 1/24 UTC+3, and this is Israel time, a new suspicious contract was deployed, where if you were Tsunami and you added the tsunami protocol pool address under monitoring, as I showed, you will get this alert in real time, and that means that a new suspicious contract, which is of a critical severity, is about to impact the protocol. Now, we also give some info around functions and so on in the contract. Some raw data and also some raw data that is very useful for triaging this kind of alert. But normally, whenever you get this alert, then you can fire off a withdrawal transaction or a pause transaction to pause anything before to pause the specific functionality or to blacklist specific actors before anything happens. Now, 2 minutes later, what happens is the first exploiting transaction took place. And as you can see right here, this is the attacker, the 5F4 in this case. And he benefited 50K in this particular case. And you see the pool was hacked for 50K in here. This is a breakdown of the assets. Of course, we also provide things like stack traces and so on that is very useful for devs, protocol devs to triage actually what happened. So this is the first attack that happened 2 minutes after we detected the first exploiting contract. Now, 10 minutes after the exploiting contract, what happens is this 078 transaction was detected by 2 of our models. One is detecting an abnormal trade, and one is the general purpose exploiting transaction model that classifies transactions as exploiting ones, where just as an example, you see that the attacker now profited $2 million in this particular case out of the pool. So all in all, in this particular case, what happened is a new contract was deployed. 2 minutes later, it was the 50K exploit, and then 10 minutes later, the $2 million attack. Following that, you see the laundering of the funds to a mixer, to Tornado, and eventually, the protocol engaged with the attacker and asked for a bounty, which of course did not work in this particular case. And you see no further movement of funds in here. Another quick example is the curve, the Viper incident, the Viper compiler incident. As you see in here again, new suspicious contract gets deployed, and then 12 seconds later, a potential loss of this $18 million from the Viper contract, which was the curve ETH pool specifically for the attacker. Around $8 million. So what I just showcased is one of the things that we have is the monitoring for exploits. As mentioned, we also have anything around forensics, analyzing addresses, monitoring phishing campaigns, monitoring governance attacks by simulating it before it even happens, and so on. So this is just a very specific view of the Hexagate platform. Awesome. So before we conclude, any questions? Love to hear them.
Thank you for that demo, Niv. It's great to see the platform and how it works with especially that well-known curve hack. I just wanted to say, I think it's a great approach you guys are taking to security with both the exploit monitoring as well as phishing monitoring, especially as phishing attacks are becoming more and more complex, and especially with known important members in the MakerDAO community, specifically aligned delegates. who might be specifically targeted with comprehensive phishing attacks. So thank you for your presentation and your demo. One question I had was with regards to, I guess, phishing attacks on Web 2. Is there any current way or, forward-looking strategy to, in a way, mitigate search results on browsers of malicious links? Like you mentioned earlier, the false MetaMask download or things similar to that, where a user, might type in, a DeFi protocol that they use regularly, and that false link comes up as one of the top results. I was just curious if there's any sort of way to like downvote or, I guess, flag those types of links with traditional, Web 2 browsers.
So first of all, thanks for the feedback. And I think you kind of right on the spot in terms of like where we're kind of aiming. So eventually, like we're aiming to protect like ecosystems and not just like not just specific I don't know, just specific contract, but rather like the entire ecosystem. Also, like any governance participants that has like lots of maker tokens, any community members, any core contracts, any third parties that use that are relevant. For example, for Maker, if Maker is launching on other chains, which is very susceptible to bridge hacks that might like impact also Maker and so on. So all in all, like our platform is broad in the sense that we can provide security and safety for all of that. So that was right on the spot. Now regarding protecting against like phishing campaigns of that sort, so this is exactly like the part of the kind of thing that we're solving in Hexagate. And what we advise is obviously like to download our extension, which is blocking those phishing sites right up front. Of course, like if a user now downloaded a malware which now installs a malware on the computer and he downloaded it via, I don't know, he just like took it from someone sending him that over Discord or something, and the antivirus even didn't catch that. I mean, if it's not through a regular browsing activity, then it's harder to detect because like, we don't have an antivirus that runs on the computer, but rather any kind of browsing activity should be covered by our extension. So that means, like normally today, the way phishers work is they have kits. They just buy kits online on Telegram or any other Signal, whatever, and then they deploy those kits, those scan kits, on many different kind of domains, and then they incorporate like different strategies. Like for example, Twitter, they post on Twitter and they fake followers, they generate like a fake ad on Google and so on, so that users are lured into browsing into a malicious dApp. Now, whenever like we see a malicious dApp before it even hacks, before it even impacts any users, then we flag it automatically, and it's all streamlined into our extension, so that whenever users go into that malicious dApp, we're able to tell that in real time and block the communication with the malicious dApp that might drain the wallet. So on that front, like I would advise like downloading the extension, because also it's because like we're not expecting the entire community to be like security researchers deciphering like transactions and so on, but rather like we want to provide tools to abstract away security, so that just like as you have an antivirus on your computer or that mitigates threats, so this is like kind of our mindset.
Excellent. Thank you for walking through that a bit. yeah, really excited to check out that extension myself, and certainly a powerful tool for not only the maker community, but the entire crypto blockchain ecosystem. So thank you for what you guys are building and working on. Before we wrap up, if you'd like to leave us with the best way to reach out and find out more about Hexagate, that would be great.
For sure. So the best way to reach out is either through Twitter, direct message to Hexagate _. That's our Twitter. Or via mail to info@hexagate.com or nev@hexagate.com. That's me. And of course, like anyone can follow Hexagate to see any new advancements and so on. And all in all, like we will be very much interested to talk with anyone who thinks either he wants to protect himself, his community, his users, wherever. Like we'd love to help like anyone with our tools or during in a time of need. So anyone is welcome to actually contact us.
Great. Well, thank you again for taking time and joining us today. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thank you, guys, so much for having me in here, and looking forward to be working with the Maker ecosystem